The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to another episode of Speaking with the Senator. I'm Senator Kevin Avard, your host, and I represent District 12 here in New Hampshire. And this show is about you. It's about giving you a chance to speak with the Senator about issues that may have some political implications or not, and let you have a voice. I don't ask you if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, or anything. I just ask you to come on the show, share your thoughts, and go from there. And hopefully we can ask good questions to help you get the conversation out there so people can be engaged. So with that, today's show is going to be a little bit about addiction and about injection sites. And it's kind of controversial because some people want to help and some people want to say, well, no, that's your bed, you made it. You sleep in it. And there are valid points on every side, but we just want to have a conversation about really what's going on in our communities, Nashua, Manchester, especially where seems to be a great population of users, if you will. I don't know what the term to call them. And it seems as though things have been exacerbated because of the COVID situation. People get locked up, they get separated, and that's not healthy. And because of this, people may use more. They might have more psychological problems as a direct result of being separated or not being able to get the care that they need. And so what do they do? And this is a real problem, whether you agree with the solution or not. It's healthy to at least listen to the conversation. So with that, I'm going to introduce my guests. I have Adam and Nicole. Mm-hmm. And how do you say your last name, Adam?
Aquizap.
Aquizap. And Nicole?
Easy. Nicole White.
Nicole Easy White. Nicole White. So I met Adam at Lift Barbershop?
Rise Barbershop.
Rise Barbershop.
Yep.
Why do I call it Lift every time? Because of the hair.
It might be, yeah.
Yeah. And Nicole, you're a guest, and you have a background in psychology? Or?
I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner.
Yikes. That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that takes a while to be certified or licensed?
10 years, yeah.
10 years.
So it's in the nursing profession. It's like the hierarchy of like
a nurse practitioner, right?
Yeah.
You can prescribe?
I can.
Oh.
Yeah.
And like myself, I've been sober 15, 16 years, December 20th. You also
about 10 years.
10 years in recovery. And that's liberating, isn't it?
I had 5 years before that little relapse and then 10 years now.
Yeah. And it's liberating to be able to say that.
It is.
It is. And I think it's a beacon of light and help for those that may be struggling.
Yeah.
And speaking of struggling, we have a situation where people, I remember Representative, not Amon, but it was Hansen.
Okay.
I think it's Keith Hansen or Joe Hansen. He was a representative, and he was really adamant about the Clean Needle program. Mm-hmm. And one of the arguments that he put out there was the fact that, well, if you provide the clean needles, you will lower the risk of hepatitis C.
Yep.
Now, one case of hepatitis C, if correct me if I'm wrong, could potentially be up to $100,000 that the taxpayers have to.
This is correct.
So, dirty needle, hepatitis C, clean needle, not so much on the taxpayer. Same result they're still using. Mm-hmm. Some people want to say, well, Why
I
is
would
that?
argue more than 100, more than just Hep C.
But that's just one patient.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the actual amount of cases are, but one case spread amongst shared needles amongst users causes the state hundreds of thousands,
You're in the millions.
in the millions. So, what about these safe houses? Talk about that in the needle exchange.
Currently, the focus is getting people to use safely. We are at kind of a crossroads where we understand that we cannot get everybody to completely be abstinent. So the harm reduction model is really taking over, and rightfully so. And like you said, $100,000 for one treatment of hepatitis C. I mean, I could think of 10 people right now that I know that have hepatitis C. Whether they have state insurance or not, let's say that they all do. Now that's $1 million a year for one infectious disease caused by one dirty item. Now, if they provide a safe place that they could go and use and limit those infectious diseases, now we're talking maybe we take $1 million off of Medicaid's shoulders. So the safe homes, I believe, are going to be very prominent in lowering overdoses, going to lower hepatitis costs, lower any other infectious disease that you can acquire by a dirty needle. And also at the same time, it provides that human connection that we're all longing for as addicts. Coming up on 4 years in recovery myself, connection and just human interaction was exactly what I needed. My recovery looks a little bit different than just talking to human beings on a daily basis, but maybe you sit down and have a conversation with someone like yourself, or someone like me, or someone like Nicole. And
A place to throw a lifeline.
Exactly.
Yes.
And now they have a place where they feel,
It's full of resources.
it's full of resources.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I've gone to AAs in the past, and I found them to be either a meat market or a place where people get their hole punched. It does help people, though, at the same time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you can't just say AA is the only solution, right? Or it isn't the solution. It does help other people.
Yeah, it's all valid.
It's all valid, and it has its downfalls. So are these safe houses. I mean, one of the arguments that people will probably be saying is, well, wait a minute. So I'm going to be spending tax dollar money so that it'd be a safe place for people to do drugs. Are we going to encourage it? It's almost like that model: build it and they'll come.
Right.
So that's the flip side of the coin, and you're engaged in a lot of conversations about this, and it's got to be frustrating because you see what?
I see both sides.
Yeah.
And I can't say that I disagree with the argument. But what I can disagree with is the lack of compassion.
Right.
The fact is that there are plenty of avenues of recovery, and this may be the newest one. And why shouldn't we give it a shot?
Yeah. Have you been engaged in these at all? I mean, have you seen them?
I think it's important for people to understand that by providing this space, we are talking about not having needles in our streets, at the parks, at all these places where, I can't believe drug addicts are leaving it here.
Oh, we've seen them
Right.
in Manchester.
Right. So,
yeah.
okay, the more we provide a safe space and teach them how to be safe as well, the less the community will see that. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. I do. And I remember when Narcan was an issue, and we actually engaged in providing that, which is it's a good thing. Why? Because it saves lives.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So it saves lives. Instead of you throwing water on somebody, which usually seems to be the case, you give them the Narcan, and then some will say, "Well, are you encouraging it? How many times?" And there was a phrase that some of the first responders brought to my attention that they're going through right now, and it's called compassion fatigue. Oh, him again. Oh, her again. Oh my gosh.
It's
How
real.
many times? And of course, they're going through this. And how do we solve this? How are you reaching out and throwing out a lifeline when people are at these places? How is this effective?
So, and that's a good question. I think, and Nicole actually brought this to my attention the other day. We were scrolling through websites, and it comes down to, Kevin, the more resources we have, the more limited the fatigue will be.
Right. So describe to me what a safe house is.
I think from like a bird's eye view, what for people to understand is going on in there. Yes, are they actively using illicit drugs? Yep, that's happening in those spaces, but it's not about that in those spaces. It's more about providing them the proper tools, I guess, to be able to use in a safe way. And aside from that, we're making sure that people aren't overdosing. And if they do, then there's a safe place for them to have access to people who are going to save their life and get them the right resources.
Right.
Because it's when somebody overdoses and it's that moment when they wake up and they're like, what am I doing? That you have somebody there that can provide a good intervention and possibly get them into treatment.
Do emergency psychiatric units come and help out in these particular places?
So from what I've seen in many different places is that there's an entire team, and sometimes there's doctors, sometimes there's nurses. So yes, to answer your question, there's a team there. Yeah.
So is there legislation to expand or to reduce or to deal with this particular topic?
So it's funny you asked that. Just recently, that legislation, the language was completely taken out of that.
Okay.
And essentially us being told better luck next year. And I think that it was partially in the reason because it wasn't in a way that made sense to the appropriate people that make these decisions. So financially speaking, a plan that goes in front of them may alter their decision a little bit more than, say, just nifty words of a safe injection sites. I think the more people that get behind this operation and the more real-time data that we can provide.
And fiscal output that you have to put for people that are, going to get and spread hepatitis C.
Absolutely.
That was one of the, I think for me, with Representative Hannon was, it was a lesser, if you don't mind me saying, of two evils, right?
Yeah.
It was, by providing the clean needles, it was a lesser of two evils. And affected the community with a less impact, if you will. So, prior to this conversation, we had an interview with Representative Keith Amon. He just walked off stage a while ago. And something caught my attention as we're bantering back before. What is this Puerto Rico, or is it Portugal
Portugal, yes.
method? What is all that about?
It's the more you decriminalize drugs, like, I think people have heard it before, like the war on drugs and psychologically created more war on drugs.
They created a black market and
It created, right.
Everything.
Yep.
the forbidden fruit, as Keith mentioned.
Yes, and the more we shame people for using substances, and for those people, I think that haven't used alcohol or drugs, I think we can all agree that everybody's got something going on, whether it's like the whole chocolate cake,
What do you got this? What?
Casinos, but casinos, we're talking like on a large scale. Like,
Addiction on many different
Yeah.
levels. That,
Absolutely.
pornography, food,
yeah,
alcohol.
it's highly marketed.
Mhm.
The whole addiction. So I sometimes when people just isolate it to drugs and alcohol, like we're beyond that at this point. We're talking about like every person, right, has something going on.
Right.
And so your question was, what was your question? Ask me again.
Oh, as far as the Portugal,
What was their method?
So the more you decriminalize and normalize something, you're reducing shame, stigma, isolation, and you're able to like talk more about it. So let's just all think about our own children, right? So as they're going through their own lives, there's these old beliefs that we tell them what to do. And by doing so, we're also separating ourselves from our children, right? So when they're experiencing teen years and all that stuff, they don't feel comfortable to just say, Mom, I tried weed and this is what happened to me. Or, Mom, I drank alcohol, or I tried a benzo, whatever it is. Just normalizing the conversation around what it's like to be a human and have real human experiences. So Portugal and other countries are seeing that. And I think Amsterdam was the one that everybody's always shamed. Like, oh, you go to Amsterdam and everything's decriminalized. And right, but look at the people, their jail rate is lower. Like I saw a study recently wait, was it a study? I forget what it was, but it was talking. Beacon Health
Yep.
Options. Beacon manages the well sense in New Hampshire.
Okay.
Okay, so they have a ton of stuff going on that's actually really cool, and they're just sharing information. And one of it was like the percent of people incarcerated that have either mental health or substance use, and we're putting them in jail
Right.
and then sending them back out.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? And it's like a vicious cycle.
And they're using it in jail as well.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
because they don't know any other way. They're not getting the resources. It's not about, if anybody thinks that somebody who's using and on the brink of death wants to be in that space, like that's not what's going on for them. Do you know what I mean?
There's a depression that's very cyclical, and you get trapped in it, and it beats you down like being under the waves. And just as you're ready to get up, there's that other wave, and it just crashes on top of you over and over and over again.
Yeah, the younger generations aren't buying what people are selling. Then it's not just grinning Brit life and just like, do as you're told and just get a job you don't like, and like they're not buying that. And
I don't think that's anywhere out there anymore.
no. And those are the spaces where like addiction lives. You know, when you're just surviving in life, when you're just holding on and that's not living.
Are there other resources? I mean, there's there's philosophies, there's Christian organizations, faith-based organizations. Are they allowed in these particular communities or places? Do you have missionaries or people that go in?
To answer that question for us personally, and how, because to bring it back to like a smaller scale, like our clinical director is very heavy involved in her own church, and she brings that into her work.
Yeah, I mean, not a place that beat it over somebody's head, but
nope,
Right.
she just brings it into her little interactions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
At Rise Barbershop, it's funny. You go in there, you get your hair cut, and you see the bantering going back and forth. Somebody leaves, and you hear one of the barbers say, "I love you."
Always.
Love you. And wow, how often do you hear that? Just people just throwing that out there. Love you. And they generally mean it. And I really think that is part of the answer, that there, the greatest light isn't necessarily legislation. It is definitely love coming from the community, and genuine, not hypocrisy, people going in trying to make a name for themselves or something like that, shining light on, you're just trying to help.
We've cultivated, I'll say this, we've cultivated like a sub-community within Nashua that is loving, caring. We want the people that come through our doors to actually get better and not stay sick.
Right.
And by doing so, we empower them to be some of the best citizens I know.
Yeah.
So I think like that I believe in what we do. I can't speak to everyone,
Yeah, and I think they want to put a safe place for people not to use as well. That's what they're shooting for, and they have an event coming up. I believe it is June 6th.
I believe you're right.
It's called Cornhole.
It is.
Cornhole
The cornhole tournament.
Cornhole
They
tournament.
have such a good time.
Yeah,
Yep, it was very successful last September. So,
and that's to help people that are in recovery and want to stay in recovery, and surround yourself with people that, hey, we've been there. Gone to jail, or you've been relapsed 5 times.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's part of it.
Yep.
Absolutely.
It's part of it. There, to me, this barbershop here in Nashua, one year I went to a play in New York City, and I was walking down the street. We're going on the way to the boardwalk or whatever, Broadway. And I seen this lady. She's pretty much an older lady. And she's walking at a really fast pace and laying in the street with his hand like this, just laying there. He was out. He was completely gone. He was just out without missing a beat. She put a sandwich in his hand and then kept walking on. It was like an angel, and it was a lifeline for that person. And I thought, wow.
That's how it should be.
That love is beautiful. Love is beautiful, and I'll never forget that. It was maybe 20 years ago, and I think of Rise Barbershop. that's what they're doing.
Absolutely.
They're putting that sandwich in somebody's hand. There's an oasis, and to me, churches as well. I believe in the gospel. I believe in the Lord Jesus, and He is my Savior, my Lord.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to share that with anybody who wants to ask me. But never want to beat it on somebody's head.
No.
But there is a lifeline that you can put out there if somebody's willing to.
One of our team members
Reach.
is a big Jesus guy.
Yeah.
You know,
Jesus
and
guy. Hey,
we also have
yo, Jesus is my friend. Yeah.
we also have like a Jesus girl. You know? And
Yes.
Yes, we
they
do.
just,
She happens.
without even imposing their beliefs,
Yeah.
they just share God with
It doesn't
them.
work if you
Yeah.
impose it. It doesn't. It's
No.
totally opposite of how it's supposed to be presented. But that being said, I think it's important for other areas, psychological, the psychiatric units, and things.
Science is catching up to spirituality.
Yeah, what has to? We can't just ignore some of our past and embrace it, and also have the understanding that we're a little more complicated
Yeah.
in our
Absolutely.
in our being. We are spiritual beings, in my humble opinion. We're souls
I agree.
created in the image of God, in my humble opinion, and we depend on each other.
Yes.
There's a series
We're an
on.
expression of God, all of us,
Yes.
whether you fight that idea or not.
Well, everybody has a different thumbprint, and it's his way of being very creative. But there's a show on television. It's called Alone. Have you ever seen that?
No.
I have not.
They put these people out into a place in the wilderness, and they're by themselves, and they know how to survive, blah, blah, blah. But what's killing them is being alone
Mm-hmm.
and missing the family. And it's not natural to be alone. We are not meant to be alone. We're meant to be a community.
Yes.
And there are some of us that need help. There's some of us that have been helped, and these are places, safe places,
Yes.
to help people. You have the advantage of seeing both sides of it. How does that make you feel?
It's a blessing and a curse.
It is. It's bittersweet, isn't it?
I am very convicted in what I believe in, but I'm not naive enough to think that there isn't another side.
How do we bring people along? How do we say, look, I understand, we don't want to fund bad behavior,
Right.
but we don't want to just let people die in the street either.
Absolutely.
And whatever caused them to get to this position in life, how can we change it? How can we be a resource so that they be made well?
I think for me, it looks a lot like me putting my faith in taking somebody's hand when I didn't know the way. I can't go into somebody else's specialty and say, "Hey, try this out." They look at me with three heads. We are incredibly good at what we do. We believe in what we do, and a lot of times our clients and people, our peers, I should say, they believe in what we do too, and they put their trust in us.
What organization do you represent?
The Process Recovery Center in Nashua, New Hampshire,
And Rise.
and Rise Above Sober Living as well.
Rise Above Sober Living. And are you the main person on that? Or?
That would be Michelle Leclerc. I can give you resources on that as well.
Yeah, how do people, if they're watching the show, how would they contact to be either a help or to find help?
Yeah, so I think if you're somebody who's just like around Nashua, we're in downtown Nashua. We have two offices across the street from each other. They
Where?
could even East Pearl.
Yep.
East Pearl.
Yep, and then they could even go into the barbershop if they wanted to.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
I do, because I go there.
Okay.
Yeah, and people can walk in. They, talking to Dave and
Craig.
Yeah. Some people go in there, get a haircut. Sometimes they can't afford it. They get a free haircut.
Yeah.
And they just need a place to cry.
Yeah. So, yep.
Right.
Yeah. So Rise Barbershop, it was formed from our sober living community, from the treatment center,
Yeah.
Yes.
because one of our partners, his name is Chris, and he believes in getting people well so they can prosper. You know what I mean?
Teaching them a trade,
Yes,
teaching them how to
yes.
get out.
So we have a construction company too. So all of that stuff is kind of, and then they find work, they find it's
Yeah.
crazy.
I've been trying to feed them some resources. We've had years ago an individual, it was a federally funded program called My Turn. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So, people that are in addiction, they've made some bad choices. They've maybe got a record, and so they've gotten themselves into a trouble and into a pickle where they can't get a job. Well, what's your criminal background? Well, this, that. My Turn is an organization for people to go to get help to get past that area and get another shot at a chance to work in society. And I mentioned that, you can look it up on, I think it was Gate City Chronicles.
The recovery model, the real recovery model is it's wrapped around. It's not just like come get off drugs. That's not the real recovery model that we're all supposed to be following as treatment providers. It's all of it. It's the whole picture. You know what I mean? And I feel like we do a really good job at making sure that we're hitting everything for what they deserve. They deserve these services. They deserve it to be wrapped around all of it, not just come and get off drugs, Right.
And who knows why they got on drugs? Either they were abused, or there could be a host
Something's
of
going on inside.
something, and it's broken.
Yep.
And it needs to be fixed.
And the answer is love.
It is. And with that, again, how do people get in touch with you?
So actually, if anybody would like to go to our website, www.theprocessrecoverycenter.com, there's a live chat bubble that pops up. That is me. So that's me. So
sound check.
If anybody needs to reach out to us, or even are looking for sober living beds, I can be reached at on the website there.
If a legislator wants to talk to you a little bit more, same way, just
that too. My email is also on the website.
Okay.
If you just kind of scroll around under our staff, my email, as well as other client service coordinators' emails are on there as well. So we can all be reached via these.
So, and you work in tandem together at this unit. So
we're very family oriented. So yes.
So we got 54 seconds. What's most pressing? What's needed?
Well, I'd say at this current moment, there's a House bill going through, hopefully not put into legislation that could really damage some of the progress that New Hampshire Corps has put into place to support sober living homes.
Reduce the funding or something to
reduce
that?
Funding, a lot of fire standards that are going to make it very difficult for people who are already certified to continue to get their certification, which will cause them to lose all their funding.
It would cripple the system in place.
I see. Okay, well, there you go. Thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for everything that you're doing into the community. And hats off to Rise Barbershop. And June 6th, if you know how to do I call it bag hole, but it's cornhole.
Cornhole,
Yeah.
yes.
Cornhole. I think it's in Derry or Londonderry. Check it out. Rise Barbershop has all the information. And if you have a topic that you'd like to share, come on the show. We'd love to give you an opportunity to tell your story. And with that, thanks for watching Speaking with the Senator. We'll see you next week.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.